number of people on stage has grown slightly compared to our previous, and that is because we have 3 spots open on the Culver City Unified School District. I'm sure there are many parents here, including myself, who care a lot about our education, and the fact that we have unfortunately some dueling events this evening with a city council race, but both are very important to the quality of our life of our city, and we appreciate everyone for being here today. Again, I would like to thank the men's group for their wonderful work in putting this together, along with the Sisterhood and Temple Akiba. We are excited as Rosh Hashanah is coming up, and are just enjoying being a part of this community. In addition to being a parent and a PTA member, I am also a member of Culver City Dem Club. I am a member of the Exchange Club, and a DNC member, and a bunch of other things which I probably need therapy for being so involved. But it's important. These positions impact our community every day on the ground. With that in mind, I'm going to go over quickly a couple of rules. Because we've got so many more people, it's going to be a lot more difficult for us to go through and make sure everyone gets their say. So what we are going to do today is try to make sure that everyone gets time to go over this. I think I went over the rules here. I'm going to try to restate them from memory, and some people remind me if I don't have it right. But we're going to have a minute 30 for opening statements for everybody. We're going to then go through questions. If everyone can try to keep answers to, was it a minute? Okay. They get 1 verb. All right. They get 1 minute for opening statement. And I think we also said something on the line of also a minute for answering each question. And then everyone will also get a minute for closing. As with before, you've got these wonderful cards. You can see that we had a lot of those questions, and they made up a large portion, so we appreciate hearing from you. And as our beautiful spokesmodel here is demonstrating with the card that we have here, the note card he has in his hands, please feel free to fill them out. Ask your questions. Because besides the mail and some community events, this is a chance for us to go in person. As the other candidates in the state senate noted, this is also one of the first and a very small number that have started to come in person, and we appreciate everybody being here in person for this event. It shows how our community is coming back, and everyone is coming back to life a little bit. So with that, we're going to start here on the left, and move all the way over to the right in terms of order. And I'll try to move everyone down through each succeeding question, so everyone gets a chance to go first and gets the chance to speak. So as before, with 1 minute, there will be 1 knock for 30 seconds, 2 knocks when you have 10 seconds, and as I mentioned before, we have removed the shot plates, which was our other way of helping people keep people on target. But hopefully we won't have to cut people off or anything like that. Everyone has worked wonderfully so far together, and as we've seen, this is education. It's something that everyone feels passionate about. But we're all here because we want what's best for our kids. So with that in mind, I will let Stephanie start us off. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Stephanie Loredo. I believe in building a culture of care that empowers students, families, and district employees to thrive. A culture of care embraces and empowers students and identity, and forms a community that shines brighter when everyone feels safe, heard, validated, and supported to achieve. When students participate in nurturing school with resources to be the best version of themselves, they bring a more light and goodness into this world that is channeled to others in their schools and beyond. My mission is to strengthen the pillars of achievement, belonging, and community that support this culture of care. I'm a Filipino-American and progressive who advocates for diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability, serving Culver City through organizations such as the LCAP Partner Advisory Committee, the Inclusive Practices Administrative Regulations Committee, and the nonprofit Lachman. Thank you.
2 seconds left, I'm impressed.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you to Temple Akiba for having us here this wonderful Tuesday evening. My name is Darrel Menthe, and I'm running for Culver City School Board because I'm committed to making Culver City schools the best that they can be. You know, like many of you, I'm a parent. I've had 2 kids at Culver City Unified since kindergarten, and the oldest is now at the high school. Some of you may know me as the president of the Downtown Business Improvement District. I've also been a lawyer for 25 years. I'm very proud, by the way, to say that I've been endorsed for this position by the Culver City Federation of Teachers and also by the school board president, Dr. Steve Levin. You know, I like to believe that they endorse me because they share the same mission and values that I have. And that mission is really to launch Culver City schools into the top tier of public schools in Los Angeles County. We do that by investing. We invest in smaller class sizes, in safe and clean spaces to learn, and making excellence the mission. So thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to a great evening. And yours.
Are you aware of what is happening in our schools? If you are you happy with them, their conditions and safety? Because I'm not, which is why I'm running for school board. My name is Marci Baun. I have lived in Culver City for over 20 years, and I'm a concerned parent and citizen. Safety, education, and maintenance have gone by the wayside, and we are failing our kids. Kids can't learn if they're in constant fear for their safety. Education has suffered under these current policies. Schools that were once ranked in the highest in the nation, they aren't anymore. Our school board plans to eliminate all honors classes. What will happen then? This year's budget is $92 million, and less than $150,000 has been allocated for maintenance for all campuses. Our children deserve to get a high-quality education. Our teachers, staff deserve to work in a safe and clean environment. Thank you for coming tonight. I look forward to answering your questions and concerns and getting your support.
Thank you.
You said 2 Knoxes, 10 seconds, right?
What?
2 Knocks.
Yes, I
Just I want to make sure I have it.
I was negligent on the knocks.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
I tend to remedy.
All right.
Good evening, folks. My name is Howard Adelman. That's what it says right there. I'm running because I truly believe that the current leadership at Culver City Unified has abdicated their responsibility to our kids. The situation on the ground is completely untenable. You can ask students, you can ask caregivers, you can ask stakeholders, you can ask faculty. I'm not going to have time in 60 seconds to give examples of all of the different groups of people who have complained on the record about how bad the situation is. I don't refer to myself as a hero, but there's a saying about how heroes aren't born, they're made. And I believe as a candidate, I'm kind of the same way. I don't necessarily think I was born to be a candidate, but the situation as it is has turned me into a candidate. I've been an educator for 26 years, 22 years in the classroom, and overlapping, thank you, 8 years of the last 8 years I've worked as a foster youth services counselor with the LA County Office of Education, representing the educational rights of the 30,000 foster kids in LA County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is McBride. I'm a 6-year member of the Culver City School Board. I was appointed in 2017 and ran uncontested in 2018. I have 4 students currently in the district and 1 recent graduate. I am a 13-year volunteer in this district. I've lived here for 15 years, and from the moment we became parents in the district, I got involved. I served as a PTA president in El Rincon for 2 terms. I've been on booster clubs, councils, school site councils long before I became a school board member. And once I became a school board member, I joined the Equity Advisory Council and helped create the first ever district strategic equity plan. I have also served in many capacities supporting all of our students throughout this district. During my day job, I'm a certified parenting instructor. I work with a lot of families who have open DCFS cases. I've also gone into women's correctional facilities holding small groups. And I was appointed as a commissioner for the Los Angeles County Department of Public Social Services last year by Supervisor Holly Mitchell. If I'm able to be reelected, I want to continue the work that I've been doing for the last 6 years. Thank you.
Good evening, Temple Akiba. My name is Guerrero. I'm a Culver City parent. My son went to El Marino and then the middle school, and then he's at the high school right now. I've been an educator for 27 years, mostly down in Lenox by the airport, where I was an elementary and middle school teacher and curriculum specialist. I'm active in the labor movement. I was chapter president for 6 years of my teachers union, and now I work for the California Teachers Association, where I'm a policy analyst. I read the policies that come out of Sacramento and the Department of Education. I analyze them, I boil them down for local chapter leaders so that they can understand it. I decided to run for the school board because as I was watching on Zoom over the last couple of years, I saw that the perspectives that I bring, that of a classroom educator, that of a labor leader, weren't represented on the board. There were questions that the board didn't ask because nobody had that type of experience, and there were pitfalls that I believe the board ran into. I think Culver City has a lot of things to work on, and I think having that classroom perspective and that labor perspective would make them better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Tristan Ezidore, and I'm really proud to be here today as a candidate for Culver City School Board. I've done extensive work with the district around the Equity Advisory Committee, as well as restorative justice practices, as well as positive behavior intervention support and sexual assault reform. This means that I've served on the front lines of making sure that our district is a community of care, that we aren't leaving students behind. I understand what it means to hold district leadership accountable through the work of the school board, and I've been dedicated to ensuring that life-affirming resources are readily available to our community. By day, I work as a Section 3 Youth Employment Case Manager for the Housing Authority of the City of LA. I'm running for Culver City School Board because I believe our community needs a champion for care, someone who deeply and personally understands what it means to be left behind, to be forgotten by our government, and not see yourself reflected in education. I understand and believe that Culver City Unified School District must lead by increasing access to inclusive support and rigorous course opportunities for every student, but that we cannot do this work unless we elect people with a tested and proven track record of delivering on these commitments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll pass that all the way around back to the front for the first question. So, Culver City remains the only West Side school district that does not set aside a school holiday for Yom Kippur, our holiest day, most solemn day of the Jewish calendar, having it removed from the school calendar this year after 2 years of being in line with other school districts. Do you favor restoring Yom Kippur, and what is your approach in terms of incorporating other major religious calendars where work is not supposed to take place, such as Eid al-Fitr, and I know I'm not pronouncing that correct, but other major religious holidays and the like?
Well, I think it was very painful this year to watch Yom Kippur taken off the calendar, and it was also painful to watch how it happened. You know, the school board, I think, really dropped the ball on this one. It is the purpose of the school board, if an elected school board, to represent the values of the community. What the school board needed to do was to talk early, very early, and say this is important to us, and say to the union counterparts, because this is a negotiated issue, it's a collective bargaining issue, to say in that process, we value this is important, we need to find a way to make it work so that Yom Kippur remains on the calendar. It's a special kind of day, and the reason it matters is because of numbers. If we had a huge number of Hindu students, we'd be talking about different days. We don't. There's a large number of Jewish students and staff. It is a practical reality that making Yom Kippur holiday works well for the institution. It's how most of Southern California does it. And this is not the time to make that decision. I'm sorry it happened. And I'm committed next year to working early with our union partners to make sure that we can find a calendar that satisfies everybody's needs.
Thank you.
I also did not support getting rid of Yom Kippur as a holiday within our school community. I did speak up about it. I've spoken up about it a couple of times and brought it up because I feel like it is disrespectful to the community and the people who celebrate this holiday. I also did mention that I think that we need to be respectful to other religions and their major religious holidays, because to ask someone to come to school when it's their most holiest of days is unacceptable to me. And so I do believe that that's something that we need to be discussing early on as we look at the next school year, to say what can we do and work with the union representatives to ensure that the holiest of days are celebrated and that you get them off.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I think it was particularly galling to hear from a group of people who are always speaking of equity and inclusion and diversity. They were actually bragging about how they sent the calendar back to be worked on, and at the end of that period, it turns out the Yom Kippur had been taken off the calendar. I understand that there are many religions out there, and I am Jewish, so I guess maybe I have a bit of a bias towards it, but I also know that there are no greater, there's no group of people that have suffered more on the planet over the course of human history than the Jews, and I think to not give us the one day, and it's not even a holiday, it's a day of atonement, it's a day of fasting, it's a day of considering your life. It's the day after, at the end of this, is when they blow the shofar and God closes the book of life for the year. So it's not like a big celebration, and I think it's really disrespectful that the opportunity for us to concentrate on that day and not have to worry about anything else was taken away.
So there were some things that I didn't share during this discussion as a board member because it wasn't about me as an individual. But what a lot of people don't know about me is that my paternal grandmother is first generation Hungarian and she is Jewish. And for the 4 years that I was in high school, I studied Hebrew. And it's because of that culture being so important to me. At the same time, I am an advocate of equity. And when we look at a district that has the statistics and the data that we have over 70 languages spoken right here in Culver City School District. And if that number of languages is any indication of the cultures that are represented here, this is so much more of a nuanced issue than to just put one holiday or one holy day back onto the calendar. And the year before, I was the board member that raised the issue when it all of a sudden disappeared without discussion. And I was the board member that requested that if we continued in that way, that we needed to have community forums, that we needed to have surveys done with staff. And we did do that. This is not an issue that's going to be resolved in one board discussion. It's an ongoing discussion that I think we need to have about representation for all communities represented in Culver City.
Thank you.
I think for me, I would approach this from a question of process. I don't celebrate Yom Kippur, but even watching the process unfold this year, it was incredibly poor communication, and just the amount of confusion in the community about what was happening and what wasn't happening was disturbing. I believe in a process that should be transparent, it should be inclusive, people should have opportunities to have input on what they think, different faith communities, different cultural groups. Surveys, I know there were a lot of complaints about the survey, people feel like it should be, that it was biased. I think the survey needs to, whatever survey or tool is used, needs to be rolled out and kind of agreed on in advance, not people having to second guess it when it's over. I think with all of that, there's other things to look at, ADA, which is that daily attendance, which days are students missing. Issues like childcare, when you have a day off, a lot of people have to figure out what to do with their kids. But once you develop a clear, transparent, fair process, then I think you follow through with that process. And I don't think the board should be interfering with that process if the stakeholders have figured it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm also going to second Brian's piece about process. I was really active in the community 2 years ago when this issue came up, when Ms. McBride during the pandemic pointed out that Yom Kippur was taken off as a holiday, and I was really active this year when it became an issue again. I think, to me, board's direction was for the district or its staff to come back with an inclusive calendar that inclusively represented every holiday that students would need to take a day off for. What I'm in support of is having excused absences for students who need to take and celebrate the day off of the holiday that they were, or the holiday that their faith represents. And what I support is making sure that we're respectful to the faith-based community and the holidays that they advise.
Thank you. If we can hand that back to, I guess, Marci. Oh, no, Stephanie, everyone's done a good run. Yeah. Make sure everybody, see, we have to keep track of all 7. All right, thank you. My apologies.
So, a lot of the pain point here is that folks feel unheard and that, you know, I don't think that people disagree that there's a lot of, we don't all celebrate the same holidays, but that the direction was supposed to be that, that there would be a representative that would be on the district side from cabinet that was going to represent the parents and through the survey process. And because the survey was biased and because they weren't really represented in a way that it felt like the survey made a difference, that's why the communication was tough. And I support putting in some kind of language for making sure that we do not make anything important on those high days of holidays, including like student elections and absences. So that will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next. Oh, turn that off there. Sometimes this thing doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, so moving to a broader approach to education policy, I know that teacher morale is also very low. It's been tried, you know, it definitely has been strained as a result of the pandemic and the challenges of teaching classes virtually in difficult situations with limited resources. How can we help raise morale for our teachers and attract talent to want to come to and stay in Culver City teaching time?
Well, first off, the teachers that I've spoken to, a lot of the issue with the morale is not only the safety in the schools, but the fact that they don't feel like that there is any communication between the district and the teachers, that they aren't being heard and or listened to, which is even more important. You can hear somebody and not listen to them. So the fact that they have been essentially ignored as to what was important to them and they feel unheard, that is a huge, huge thing that we're going to have to overcome. There needs to be better communication between the board and between the teachers. Second, we are currently down so many teachers that we are, like many school districts, they're struggling to find people to come in and work. We need to find qualified teachers and be willing to pay them appropriately in order to get them to come and give or teach our students and give them the quality education they deserve.
Thank you.
So some of you may know, some of you may not know, but on June 9th of last year, Culver City Middle School principal resigned, and it's now 3.5 months later, and there is still no principal at the middle school. We had a fill-in principal who was recently fired for reasons that are still unknown, but as of right now, 3.5 months into the search, into this thing, we have no principal and there's nothing on the horizon. It gives you an idea of what the current board seems to be valuing as far as the current staff. We have an amazing group of teachers. They're always talking about how great these teachers are and what we have to trust them and honor them. They detract English, they're detracting all the language, all the subjects, and they're saying we have to trust these teachers, and yet 70% of the high school teachers don't feel safe. They don't feel like there are any consequences, and yet not one of the school board members, not one of the candidates who sponsor some of these things that the current board values have mentioned anything about the current teachers and what they plan to do about it.
Thank you.
I will mention it. I've long held and talked about in board meetings that I spend a lot of time talking to our teachers. This is not a local issue. This is a national issue. Nationally, 90% of teachers are experiencing burnout and 55% of them want to leave the profession. And this is on top of we're seeing attrition on top of a teacher shortage because they're underpaid, they're undervalued, and in our district, we have not emphasized instruction and curriculum and professional development with opportunities for upward mobility. Those are the things that teachers look for when they get into this profession. They want to know that they're going to be paid for the work that they do, and they're going to be given opportunities to grow their craft and be able to move up if they choose to. We don't have a system of that in Culver City, and we need to. And I am one member of a 5-member, now 4-member board, where these have to be the priorities of at least a majority of our board, which we have not had.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, this is my job. The first priority, I think, in retaining and attracting more teachers is simply pay them better. Culver City is not particularly competitive in the pay and Culver City is expensive to live in, and the surrounding areas are also expensive to live in. So first of all, you need to simply pay them better. The other part, though, is to treat folks like professionals. And other people have mentioned this. It's listening to teachers when they say the kind of support they need to implement a program. Listening to teachers when they talk about what kind of programs they need to work with their students. Do they need more tutoring time? Do they need more aid assistance? What do they need? And listening to them. And helping teachers to develop their own professional development. Most of our campuses have the expertise. They don't necessarily always have the opportunity to kind of spread that around and learn from the best amongst themselves. And so treating folks like professionals is another big part of it.
I think something that the pandemic really exacerbated was how we as a district teach, or how we as a district teach staff, not just in Culver City, but again, I think this is also a national issue. Staff morale is low, and it's because of a few reasons. One, I'm a firm believer in people having broken hearts because of broken promises, because of broken systems. Simply the fact that we are paying our staff enough attributes a lot to low staff morale. One, I also agree with the piece about treating staff as professionals, including our educators, and our classified employees, and our PK teachers, because we need to have an open door policy for labor. I fully agree with the piece about them not feeling heard, and the low pay attributing to the low staff morale.
In order to have a good quality of life here, our teachers have to be supported. They have to be supported through, first of all, a living wage. And that living wage also has to do with not just teachers, but it does have to do with all district employees. Because if the whole community is not being paid a living wage for Culver City or Culver City adjacent, then then the teachers aren't going to be as supported by everybody else, because it's not just the teachers in these schools, right? As well as a quality of life goes, they also have to have access to professional development and all of the things that they need in order to be successful, and including because they want their students to be successful too. And so when they're raising their voices and saying, I need resources, I need more chances for these students to be tutored or technology, we need to be able to listen and support them in those ways as well. Thank you.
Well, this is a local issue, and it's a relationship issue. The relationship between the teachers and the board has been very strained. And that relationship issue underlies everything that is difficult in Culver City schools right now. And like all relationship issues, you have to approach it as a board member by listening, really hearing, not talking at the teachers, but letting them talk about what's important to them. We also need to keep commitments. In order for relationships to work, you have to keep your commitments. As a board, we made a commitment 3 years ago to bring teacher salaries up to the top 10% of Los Angeles County. We didn't keep that commitment. In order for us to succeed with our teachers, our board needs to be able to speak with one voice. It needs to be able to not talk at the teachers, but talk with them and work with them. And we need to have an ongoing process of collaboration that takes place throughout the year, not just at board meetings.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our next question. By the way, our Rabbi Zach Shapiro is here as well, who has been a wonderful leader for our community. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say, but it isn't the same unless we at least extend that.
I'm just grateful for all of you for being here, and Andrew as a member of the Culver City community and of our board of directors. Thank you for moderating, and welcome to all of our guests and our family members here.
Thank you. Okay, so state law mandates the inclusion of ethnic studies in high school curriculum. And the original proposal had suggestions that would have included anti-Semitic tropes and characterized Jews as white colonizers, ignoring a history of anti-Semitism and persecution in the Jewish community. It also included other major communities such as Armenians, Arab Christians, and Indian Americans. But these final state guidelines supported by the governor and the superintendent has guardrails to keep anti-Semitism out and be more inclusive. But despite these guidelines, the original proposers are shopping around a program called Liberated Ethnic Studies, trying to go back to the original program. Do you favor implementation of the state guidelines, or what is your view on the Liberated Studies program? And what is your approach going to be in terms of how we should embrace ethnic studies so that students of diverse backgrounds can see their history taught in schools, but in a way that does not exclude other oppressed communities?
That was a long question.
It was. Chapter 4. Thank you. Sorry for the long one.
Yeah, I wish I could have gotten second or third go on that one. Look, I'm honestly not one of those people that runs around yelling anti-Semitism, 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 but over the last couple of months I've noticed a lot of really egregious examples of not only anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism coming from people who are constantly talking about inclusion and equity and diversity. And that was one of the things I noticed early on, whatever the terminology is when they were talking about critical race theory. One of the things I noticed is that it included all of these groups, handicapped, LGBTQ, all these things that weren't necessarily race, but it specifically excluded the Jewish community, which I thought was pretty egregious. Some of you may know this, one of the city council members, Alex Fish, made a pretty disgusting comment about comparing sending homeless people to Palmdale with shipping Jews off to the concentration camps and the gas chambers in the Holocaust. There was a lot of outrage from a lot of community members, and Alex Fish not only refused to apologize, but I did not hear one single solitary comment from any of the candidates for either school board or city council condemning him for those comments. I didn't get a chance to answer the whole thing, but here's my take. Thanks.
So it's unfortunate that we even have to have something called ethnic studies as a standalone curriculum, because we don't have a comprehensive history course throughout K-12 education that just focuses on all people everywhere, all existences and all experiences. Because if we started with that, this would be a conversation where world histories and global histories would be interwoven, and we would see our interconnectedness. So by the time you get to high school, you would have students who understand how their lived experiences were impacted by someone else's lived experiences, and how we have much more in common than we have different. That being said, I do support ethnic studies, but I also know that the state may mandate something, but it's what we do right here in our local community through our conversations on the Equity Advisory Council, and with our teachers working in their professional learning communities and doing professional development locally to understand from our community engagement what it is we want to focus on to make sure that our students have a curriculum that reflects not only their lived experiences. There's something called mirrors and windows, seeing yourself, but also seeing through that window so you can see someone else's experiences.
Thank you.
I think inclusion is inclusion, and that means including everybody. I didn't have that mirrors and windows reference, but the same idea. It's really important for students to see themselves reflected in the curriculum, and a lot of students have not had the opportunity to learn about themselves and their history and their literature and traditions, and seen that reflected in school. At the same time, it's important to live in a multicultural society for students to learn about other people as well, and to read other folks' literature and learn about other people's traditions and culture and history and things like that. There are state standards on this, but it's ultimately local implementation. And so, like so many other things that I've said tonight, I believe in involving stakeholders, involving parent groups and communities, educators, the different folks in the community, the different cultural groups, the different faith groups, and figuring out what it is that Culver City needs and what reflects our community and our values and what's important for us and our students to learn. I haven't heard not yet, so I do think there's a chance as students get older to really kind of critically look at some of the messed up things in the history of the United States. I don't want it all to be like smiles and celebrations and things. There are opportunities to have some deeper examinations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. To my knowledge of what with the gender and ethnic studies at the state level, was that in the first version there was a mention of anti-Semitism as prejudice, even though anti-Semitism is the #1 reported hate crime in the United States of America. I also think that there was some stuff about BDS. To my knowledge, most of the state Jewish advocacy levels do agree with the now gender and ethnic studies curriculum, but it is important. Local issues matter. It is about local implementation. What I support is tolerance for everyone and a represented curriculum that represents history for everyone equitably and community-based learning as well.
question before about whose culture has capital in terms of what curriculum that we're teaching in ethnic studies, because we do have a lot of leeway in terms of what we choose locally versus also the state standards in ethnic studies. But typically we should be getting some curriculum that is representative of all of our culture and all of our background through our regular social studies, history as well. And the originators of ethnic studies in the United States in Stockton Unified School District, they have a great model where they have stakeholders from the community from different groups that are making sure that they're being represented in a way that is true to them and in ethnic studies. So I would say that there's room here for that kind of input from the community in terms of making sure that there is a reflection there that is representative.
Well, I'm glad the question was asked, because anti-Semitism is a rising problem in this world. And in our own state, we need to be vigilant. And I will be vigilant. I'm on the board to make sure that we are not having anti-Semitic tropes and things as part of what goes on in ethnic studies, although I don't really think that's going to be an issue. I do want to piggyback on something, though, that Summer says I think is very important. We have a problem with teaching history altogether. You know, and we need to do a much better job of that. And sort of a personal story. My great aunt was a survivor, and she spent 3 years in Birkenau. And I was 11, she made a tape for me, an audio tape of her experiences, and that was like 40 years ago, right? And I've been waiting for my own kids to have a decent lesson on World War II so I can play them the tape so they'll understand it. And my daughter is a freshman in high school, and it's not been happening yet, because we don't get to that until 10th grade. We can do a much better job of teaching history, and if we do that, ethnic studies will work better for everybody.
I think it's important that we do have a wide range of cultures taught, because we are a melting pot. Our entire nation is full of so many different cultures that it's important that we are aware of them, and not just aware of them, but know more about them than we certainly learned, at least I learned when I was in high school and grammar school. And interestingly enough, when my daughter, she just graduated, when she was in school, she asked me, Mom, this will be like the 8th year that I'm studying American history. When do I get to study the rest of the world? And I thought, that's a very interesting comment. Why are we not teaching our kids more about the rest of the world? So I also think that it's extremely important that, that all cultures are included and none are excluded, because there is a huge amount of anti-Semitism going on.
Thank you. Since that was a long question, I'm going to go to a short question. So what is your approach to navigating issues in which stakeholders may have divergent views?
That's a tough one, because that's everywhere we go. People have divergent views on boards and committees and in churches and synagogues and temples and in our own families. I have a family of 7. We have divergent conversations all the time where my goal is always to find a common ground. That's how I approach it. If we can find a common ground, there's something that's important to you that you don't want to give up, there's something important to me that I don't want to give up, and if we can start there, then we can work out the variables that may not be non-negotiables, that may not be the non-negotiables, but still get to the heart of what's most important to me and my core values. And I think we don't do enough of having conversations to really find out what is it that you're afraid of losing. If that thing that you're afraid of losing, I can help you protect, then maybe we can start coming to some solutions and agreements on these other things that may not be as important to you. But if we don't start with a conversation, if we don't start with a face-to-face discussion about some of these issues, especially the ones that impact our students, which are the most important issues when it comes to parents or caregivers, then we won't get anywhere. So it starts with conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the stakeholder, and I'm absolutely a proponent of bringing in as many stakeholders to figure things out as possible. I think you do get conflict, and I do think you get diversity of opinion, and I think that's actually good, because if you sit down at a table and everybody agrees with each other, you're missing something, you know. And so productive discussion, productive disagreement is a way to figure out issues with something. Good ground rules, assuming good intentions. Ultimately, we are all here foremost. I work with something called the Labor Management Initiative. It's a CDE, a Department of Education project, bringing unions and management together to work on things. And a lot of times they have conflict around something like bargaining. But one of the approaches that we take is to find another area that has nothing to do with bargaining that we can agree on, whether it's developing services for students or something like that, and working on that to kind of create that relationship and trust and understanding of the other as a human and somebody who's working at the same goal that you are, just from a different perspective. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm a firm believer in the fact that with conflict comes the need for comprehensive conflict resolution. In my work as an equity specialist in higher education office of diversity and inclusion, I dealt with the facilitation of tough conversations, and then spoke to the need for really good facilitators, really good community norms, really good training on conversations when it comes to conflict resolution and hearing each other out. I'm a firm believer in the fact that we have more in common than what separates us, and I really think that when we reach out to each other in community and we have these tough conversations, then we will be able to come to a shared outcome that everyone will be happy with. But I think what's missing first is communication, and we need a board that understands the importance of communication.
First and foremost, it's relationship building. When you have that, everyone is going to have a differing opinion, and it's good to have discourse that is representative of different backgrounds and sometimes even competing agendas. But there's a way to relationship build to make sure that everyone's being heard and seen instead of because when it seems like someone's getting so personally offended, it's because they feel like they're not being validated and they're not being heard. And if we can see through that and see what the real problem is, so that we can have an empathetic mindset, and we could do so much more together, and we could be more productive for all. Thank you.
So I think I would answer this question in part by looking at how the school district and how the school board function as an institution. The job of the school board is not really to be a legislative body. The job of the school board is to set the mission and goals for the district and then to oversee the superintendent. It's sometimes said that the school board only really has one employee, the superintendent. So it's really important that the school board be able to speak with one voice. In order to do that, we have to embrace what seem like three dirty words in this town: compromise, collaboration, and consensus. We have to be willing to do those things, to get together and make a norm as a board that we will learn to speak with one voice and not to individually go off road and speak as if we spoke for the school board, because that doesn't work for anybody. And if we can do that together, then the school will be successful, and we will be able to, we won't always find the position we want, but we'll make the compromise work.
Well, I think one of the things about our community, and actually with society, is that divergent beliefs allows us to grow as a society, because we are forced to talk to each other, try to understand each other, and maybe even change our stance on things, although not always. We have to find a way to compromise. And this is how we grow. So I think that as a school board member, it would be about listening to the stakeholders and finding ways to come to compromises with the others in order to move forward and make this the best school district possible.
I spent a good part of last year trying to get different members of the Culver City Unified School District to listen to me in a very respectful way. When they first detracked the English program, I reached out to Kelly Tarver, the assistant principal of curriculum, who promised me a lot of things and then blew me off and then never came through. I asked a school board member, Kelly Kent, who promised me things, mocked me, said she was going to get it, never came through, among other things. I reached out to the principal, Lisa Cooper, same thing. I reached out to the superintendent, Trans, same thing, very respectfully, trying to get some data because there were parents and myself who were very concerned about what was happening. That has been the overriding tone of Culver City Unified for at least the last year. And I do not believe, and I can talk about how communication is key and all this other stuff, I can talk about that for hours, but the truth of the matter is there are 2 remaining school board members who have very, very strong and staunch beliefs about the way the district is supposed to be run. The superintendent is on their side, and there are people running for the board right now who believe those things, and it's not going to change unless we change that.
So school districts have seen an understandable focus on equity to ensure that historically excluded communities or those with systemic barriers to success are involved and supported and heard, but at times that has brought tension with the competitiveness of those districts and the elimination of programs that make students competitive for private and out-of-state colleges, as opposed to expansion or support of programs to assist and level the playing field for those communities. As one example, the discussion that has gone on around the elimination and changes to the 10th grade honors English program is one example. What is your approach to balancing these 2 important goals, and what questions would you ask in evaluating these approaches?
Glad I got this one first time. I think any change needs to include a fair amount of research and a lot of process to figure out what the unintended consequences of that are going to be. I think, again, that's a reason to bring in lots of stakeholders to find out different perspectives on that. I think communication has to be much better than it is. I think the board or whoever's making the decision needs to listen. But I also think, again, in the case of honors, because in a lot of ways this is a question about the changes to the honors program, I do think a considerable amount of respect and consideration needs to be given to the experiences of the practitioners in the classroom who are dealing with this day to day and things like that. I think what you mentioned about private and schools like that, and so bringing in folks to talk about it, but just doing complete research on it before you roll out a program like this.
Thank you. You know, when I was a student in the district, and me and a lot of people that I would see in the hallways were known as what we would call frequent flyers. It would be people who would show up late to class, people who would get to class and then leave to go to the bathroom, and to really just not engage in curriculum. And to me, it speaks not to students' willingness and readiness to learn, but our ability to engage them with representative education and rigorous course opportunities. How it relates to tracking, what I support is comprehensive, rigorous course opportunities for every single student. Right now, we have a student achievement gap, 99% graduation rate, and 50% college readiness rate. The percentage of students who are overwhelmingly not, quote, college ready are overwhelmingly Black and brown, overwhelmingly students with disabilities and IEPs, and overwhelmingly English language learners. What we need to spotlight is a student achievement plan for our students who are being left behind. And with regard to tracking, we need to do that community-based and make sure that we hear people's concerns and roll up matters.
Thank you.
We need to make sure that rigorous options are available for everyone, and and we need to support our teachers in a way that they can serve each student the way that they need to be served. And that's providing them with more professional development and more ways to support each student, so that students who do need more supports, more accommodations, modifications, or extra tutoring, is getting those things, but also making sure that we're giving extra push to those who need it and giving them the opportunities. So we need to make sure that we're opening up access to everyone for the opportunities that they need it. Thank you.
I believe the first thing you need to do is bring your values to the table. And the value that I bring here is that I believe that every single child deserves to be challenged in school. That is, the students who are struggling to read at grade level, those who are able to read at grade level, those who are reading ahead of grade level, everyone deserves to be challenged. And when we had a program come down the pike that suggested abolishing the advanced classes, which they ended up doing, the questions that I wanted to ask were, what problem are you trying to solve? What data are you going to use? What criteria will you use to evaluate whether you solved it? And what are you willing to do if we haven't met the criteria you're looking for, it's not working? And I was disappointed when they did the change in honors English that no one seemed to be asking those questions. And when the teachers asked for smaller class sizes, no one listened to that either. So I definitely think when it comes to math and science, which I know is on the chopping block next, we've got to be really careful. And I'm not at all eager to see that change.
Thank you.
Equity is about being fair. If you have a race and you put everybody on the same start line, and there happens to be someone who runs really fast, do you hold them back for fairness? Of course you don't. We'd never do that. Instead, what you do is you look at the others and find their strengths and build them up from there. That is how you do this. You do not hold people back.
Do I get the extra 30 seconds? I'm gonna need
You
it.
can't just say ditto, I'm just
Ditto. Yeah, so this is how I got involved with the detracking of English at CCUSD. Excuse me. I can tell you straight up, I got 3 different times. I got 3 years, 4 years, and 8 years from 3 different people at the district saying how long they've been trying to figure this out. They've been researching it. And I will tell you, it took me 15 minutes to prove that it has never, ever, 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 in 40 years they've been trying to do this in the United States, it's never worked. The presentation, if anybody has seen it, the presentation that the teachers did to present it to the board was the most egregious sophomoric Fisher-Price, my first presentation I've ever seen in my life. There was no data, there was no anecdotal evidence, it was just a bunch of, hey, kids feel bad, and we need to have equity. But I'm telling you, unfortunately, I've been the canary in the coal mine for a long time about a lot of things, it's going to be an abject failure.
So, I love this district, but I'm very critical of it. I think we all should be critical of things that we love, and one thing that I know Culver City has been good about is getting people to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Inclusion works, restorative practices works, and detracking can work, but it's how it's implemented. We're not implementing these programs in a way where we are engaging the community early and often, that we are holding on to the things, the non-negotiables, the things that are most important, and we're also not educating the community on what is working right now and what is not working. Honors is not giving your child a leg up. We have open access for honors and AP, and there is not a direct connection from honors to AP, but AP is really where your child is going to get that extra rigor. We heard from our English teachers at the high school that there has not been a significant difference between the honors and the non-honors classes. In my opinion, that could have been addressed by increasing the rigor of honors. This is something that came from our teachers, and for that reason, I am supporting it right now. I do not support detracking science and math until we have the data to show that this has worked for our honors classes.
Thank you. So, reducing carbon impacts has been important to address climate change. What does the school district need to do to reduce our carbon footprint? As an example, should we be using more electrified buses or vehicles as a part of that?
Yeah, and thank you so much. I appreciate this question a lot. One thing that I realized when I was actually filling out the endorsement questionnaire for Sierra Club and engaging with our quarter-time sustainability coordinator is that as of July, our district is actually running on 100% renewable energies, which is extremely exciting and something that we should celebrate and applaud and commend. One thing that I would love to see is with the plan that the students put forth to the board at the latter end of last year, a district-like Green New Deal that would really spotlight these issues. One, I think what we need to do is really hire and empower a full-time sustainability coordinator, because what we've seen through this work is that we talk a great deal about what we want to do, but there needs to be someone on the day-to-day that it's their full-time job to watch implementation and to watch rollout. One thing that I really like about our sustainability coordinator is she actually found a way for us to save money, so we can go green and save money and dollars to our district to fund these resources that really help us thrive.
I really love the way that we've been able to save 37,000 car trips this past year through the free fare initiative for students. That's a lot of more healthy school and more healthy school zones that we have. And if we can continue making that program a success through providing more routes that work better for our students, that would be an improvement, as well as making sure that our school zones are safer so that our children of all ages are at least walking or rolling the last couple blocks, so that we're not all stuck in traffic in those right around the school zones. So I'd love to see that more, and the sustainability coordinator could help that as well.
Thank you.
So, sustainability is one of the things that CCUSD does reasonably well. We actually already have a Green New Deal for Culver City Unified. It's been enacted, and we're working on it. Two things to mention. The first is we have a very old physical plant at the high school, and energy efficiency there is just going to take a lot of time. We're going to have to spend some time to develop a plan to figure out how to make that more energy efficient, because we built buildings in the 60s and 70s and they just don't work the way we want them to today. The other thing is that we talk a lot about environmentalism at school, and then everyone gets in their car and drives home. And we all do that because we haven't managed to do something that the rest of the country figured out years ago. These yellow things called school buses that pick kids up and take them to school and take them back home. The partnership with the transportation department is fine, but it's not the same as having a dedicated school bus, and we need to look at doing that for equity reasons as well as environmental reasons.
I live right by the high school. I know a lot of parents drive there and drop their kids off, but I also know as someone who lives there and sees it every single day, just how many cars are backed up along those streets. And I would say, I have always wondered why we got rid of the school buses. Is it because they're expensive? What are we doing? And why are we not encouraging that instead of having the parents come and drop their kids off? And a lot of parents not only have to run from one school, they're running to another, and this expends more energy than is necessary. I think that we have already done a good job as far as getting solar panels in to the schools, but there's definitely an issue with our capital maintenance. We have to update our schools. There's just no and, if, or buts about it. Not just for Green New Deal, but for safety for our students and our teachers and staff.
Thank you.
This is probably the one question I'm least qualified to answer, to be quite honest with you, so I'm not going to even sit here and try to dance and sing for the next 51 seconds? 52 seconds, thanks, that's great. Honestly, I know that the district has gone almost paperless. I mean, I haven't seen a piece of paper come out of either of my kids' school bags in a couple of years. I know everybody's using the laptops and everything, so that seems to be a push in the right direction, although we don't know how these batteries and computers are going to end up affecting the environment in the next couple of years. Other than that, quite honestly, this takes me out of the candidacy race. I really don't have much of an answer for this. I'd like to learn a little bit more, but at this point, I don't really know. So, that's my answer.
I think in order to be a more environmentally sustainable school district, we really just have to take a look around our campuses. Dilapidated buildings and infrastructures don't lead to environmentally sustainable systems. And you don't need an environmental sustainability coordinator to tell you that. I've been meeting with our district food services director for the last year, and I've learned a lot about the system that she has to work with, a freezer that's putting out more CO2 than we should allow, and refrigeration systems that are falling apart. We have 2 small warehouses that hold food for potentially 7,000 students that are outdated, because most of our schools were designed for a student body of half the size we have right now. If we don't take a look at our master facility plan and start to budget around building out the infrastructure, providing modernization and newer campuses, full stop, across the district, then all of these efforts to make more greener spaces will be moot. Because you cannot have students sitting in a classroom where the air filtration system is relying upon ionizers that we know are not good. And those have been since stopped, but you have to have funding, policy, and political will to make these changes, and right now you do not have a majority of the board that has those 3.
I'm actually going to agree with Howard on this one. I do not know a ton about environmental science. I am open to learning about it. I know Culver City has a well-developed sustainability plan. I drive a hybrid. I don't know how it works. I have a master's in education, but not science. But what I do bring to the board is my practical experience in the classroom. For example, there's a policy, a board policy. It says At all grade levels, environmental facts should be taught so students can understand basic environmental principles. It sounds really nice, it's on paper, I doubt it's happening everywhere, because to implement something like that, you've got to talk to teachers. And you've got to say, you know, what resources do you need? Do you have the training to do this? Do you have the time to do this? Every teacher's curriculum is full. Nobody finishes in May and says, oh, we've got a bunch of free time at the end of the year. Everybody's teaching from the first day to the last day. And so if you want to add things to the curriculum, you have to have a conversation with the teachers about what you can take off the curriculum to create space for that. So I bring in a dose of realism to this, but again, environmental science is not my forte.
Okay, we've gone down the full circle, so you get to go first. Inclusion and diversity are very important. We've seen in some districts where the Jewish community in particular has been excluded from these conversations, attacked, or in some communities have been able to advance anti-Semitic tropes, sometimes cloaked in anti-Zionism. Zionism just being the belief that Jews should have a right to a homeland. How do we ensure inclusion and common understanding to ensure that exclusion does not happen in seeking the goals toward the very important goals toward equity and inclusion?
One of my priorities is to make sure that we are building a culture of care that affirms our community members' identity. And some of that has to do with making sure that in our curriculum we're being represented and we're being seen, but also that we're not just giving lip service to safe spaces, that we are making sure that that there's not just a policy or a board policy or something like that that says like there shouldn't be bias is not allowed here. And I really want to see a bias and a harassment framework that is put into place and start exploring this so that when we can make the invisible visible and make sure that we are setting goals and in terms of interrupting, preventing, identifying bias and harassment so that even if it's a microaggression or something bigger than that, we're going to make sure that action is being taken and we know what our baseline is. Thank you.
So this is a tough problem, you know. The answer, unfortunately, is not easy either. We have to teach more history. We have to teach a lot more history. That's how we deal with every group that's been marginalized or oppressed. We need to teach their story. We need to teach their story as part of American history. We need to teach the story of Jewish history as well. People need to understand these things because talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion essentially in a vacuum without discussing the stories that people come from ends up being mostly lip service. These end up being performative gestures. We end up getting letters from the school district that tell me that it's this month or that month or that other month with vaguely insulting descriptions of certain religious holidays, and that's all we get.
So one of the things that we've probably seen in the last decade, maybe a little bit more, is the denial of the Holocaust. And I think that certainly has not helped the anti-Semitism that has been popping up. And this has to do with not teaching history and not teaching what this book means. And I think that it's very important that this needs to be included. I mean, the Jews did not just suffer from the Holocaust, but there were centuries of pogroms that were perpetrated against the Jews. And I don't think that people realize just how much, most people don't realize just how much discrimination and that was against the Jews. And I think by education and including that as part of the education in this should make a difference, and then also not tolerating any of it.
So I think this might be the third question about anti-Semitism and equity, and I understand that we are at a synagogue, and I think I've pretty much made my statement, my opinion clear about what I feel about anti-Semitism and how it should obviously not be stood for. I'm going to take the next couple of seconds to say that the district is at a real tipping point right now, and what we really need to be focusing on is the quality of our education, the way that we're treating our teachers, the way that we're treating our kids, the way that we're treating our stakeholders, the way that we're treating community, the community in general, Culver City in general. I think that would go a long way. You know, you talk about a culture of care, you talk about equity, diversity, inclusion. We're the third most diverse school board in school district in California. If you walk into my apartment, you'll see my kids with their friends. It looks like a Benetton ad from the 80s. Okay, they are living the ideal of what everybody says that we need to be doing. Okay, it doesn't answer that question, but we really need to get together and really stop the chaos that's going on in this district. And I think that would go a long way to eliminating a lot of the problems that we have.
I think there are three things that go into this, and it's education, expectation, and follow-through. We talked about education, comprehensive history, but it has to be immersive. Growing up, I've gone to the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the Museum of Tolerance countless times. I've listened from a survivor multiple times. Me reading a book is not the same as me having a conversation with you and learning about your lived experiences. We need to give our students K-12, pre-K through 12, the opportunity to actually have engaging discourse with people who have had these experiences or can teach about it in a real time. The expectation has to be that we're not just learning this, but we're also needing to live this. We need to live this from the student to the staff to the district leadership. It has to be a culture that is pervasive throughout our district where we are living what we're teaching. And then the follow-through has to happen. When there's restorative practices, that means that you don't just repair the harm, but you also go to the person who is the offender and you make them accountable for the things that they've said or done. And that includes the experiences that our students have had at the hands of teachers and administrators and the acts that came from students themselves.
Thank you.
One of my teaching credentials is secondary social studies, so you're not going to get any argument from me against more history and more social studies and more civics in the curriculum. I don't know why you'd exclude any culture or any faith when you're talking about, you know, the richness of culture of Culver City and the richness of just cultures in our country in general. Cultural programming is fantastic. I don't think we do enough of that. You know, culture is exciting. Kids are interested in this kind of thing. You know, every time I've encountered racism or any type of phobia in students, it's always been out of ignorance because they're just not exposed to things, so I think exposure is important. But then going back to kind of Darrel's point, I don't know why you would do window dressing type culture. If there's something going out describing, you know, Jewish Heritage Month or Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's got a bunch of weird stereotypes or something, why aren't those communities the ones creating the information about the community to share their richness? Was that the second one?
Yeah, you have 5 seconds, but giving back more time is never objective.
You know, in my work as an equity specialist, again, in higher education, office diversity and inclusion, what we were tasked with overseeing was the entire university's equity and strategic initiatives for the entire living, learning, and working community. And what that has taught me, and what the work that we need to be rooted in, is the fact that we need to do everything we can to make sure that we address the needs of the communities who live behind, full stop. To me, that means reaching out to community members, it means reaching out to the faith-based community, it means reaching out to synagogues, it means reaching out to other districts who have done this work and are up on best practices, because it is, I think it does take a lot of temperament to say that we aren't all the experts, and we need to be able to reach out and see what's working in other districts to see how we can better be, or how we can best be better allies, and then make sure that we're just collectively moving our district forward.
All right, so we're down to the last 2 questions here. What solutions do you think can work best in our schools to meet the varying needs of our diverse student body and to help everyone excel? But these are from audience questions. Yeah, no, it's been a minute, but if everyone wants to do 30 seconds because we have 2 questions left, we can. Okay, let's do a minute on this one, and I got one last one, it's a 30-second one, so go ahead.
I'm sorry, that's the question.
If you were a tree. What solutions do you think can work best in our schools to best meet the varying needs of our diverse student body and to help everyone excel?
That's a big, broad question, and it's hard to give a short, simple answer to that. Let me say this. I mentioned a moment ago what the purpose of an elected school board is. It's not really the job of the school board members to come up with the curriculum. It's not the job of the school board members to be sort of super teachers and second guess the teaching staff. So at some level, part of my answer is I have to leave it to our teaching staff to have the best teach about those things. But more broadly, you have to center this stuff and you have to be serious about it. You've got to make sure that we are articulating how important it is that we do diversity, equity, and inclusion for real, and inclusion, of course, also means kids with special needs. We haven't talked about that a lot tonight. That's very important for us to talk about because kids with special needs, we have an inclusion situation at school right now. We started a program, we haven't paid for it. It's a persistent problem we have. Thanks.
Could you repeat the question?
Okay. What solutions do you, do you think work best in our schools to meet the varying needs of our diverse student body and to help everyone excel?
Okay, so, oh, it died. So I'm going to try to talk loud because we lost the battery. So what I think is important is, in order to do this, I think that we really do need to come down to smaller class sizes. We have such a diverse community that in order to address the needs of every student, it's almost impossible. For instance, like in high school, if you have 30 to 36 kids in one classroom, or even in 5th grade, I believe they have 32 to 35 kids in one classroom. So it's very important that we get down to smaller class sizes so we can address this.
Thank you.
We have, well, the district has completely ignored the individual students. They claim to meet the students where they are, not where they need to be and where we want them to be. But I'm going to go back to the detracking again. They're warehousing our kids into one big classroom. I have a son in 10th grade, I have a son in 8th grade. They did this in the middle school a couple of years ago. They haven't produced any statistics as to how this is going. But I will tell you this, much like Marci said, to be remotely successful when you detract, you have to have a very low student-to-teacher ratio. You have 36 to 1. They want to mainstream all the special ed kids, which is a complete abomination. They want to put all English language on. They want to put everybody in the same class and do differentiated instruction. If you don't know about it, come talk to me. I'll explain the whole thing to you. But I promise you, what you can do to help these kids with the diversity that we have, it's not just diversity of ethnicity and race. It's learning experience and ability. And what we're doing right now is a complete abomination. It's going to be just a huge failure.
Thank you.
All right, so there are 5 things that school boards are responsible for. That's facilities, budget, personnel, student discipline, and curriculum. And in order to actually improve educational experiences for all students, you actually need to focus on the budget more than anything, because the budget is how you're spending those dollars that can increase the number of teachers that you have, the number of staff and aides that you have, and that can lead to the lower class sizes that we need, and the instructional support that we need for true differentiation. I also believe at the high school, it is crazy that we have stacked schedules. We need a block schedule similar to the middle school, because that's what they do in college, and that will expand the time that students have to learn in the classroom. But more than anything, we need more staff, we need more resources and professional development to reach these goals that we have.
I think there's a lot of issues we need to work on, including improving instructional quality, cleaner and safer schools, better serving our students with disabilities and English learners, mental health needs of our students and things like that. But I don't think we're going to be able to tackle any of that unless we solve this communication problem. The parents, the community, stakeholders, employees need to be more involved, and it's the parents and folks who have big ideas and want to share, and it's folks who are hard to reach. You know, it's talking to the parents and the students who aren't being successful. It's really solving this issue of getting communication out and listening back, and only then will we be able to start dealing with all of these other problems that I think we need to solve.
You know, part of the powers of the school board is to set the vision for the district and then to direct staff to bring us back items that are within the lines of the vision of the district. What we need is intentional advocacy, specifically on our achievement gap. Again, it's not just Black and brown students who are left behind, it's also students with disabilities and IEPs, it's also English language learners, it's also women and all these stuff. So we need to have intentional advocacy and full inclusion with an emphasis on social emotional learning and care. With back-end support, it's about rollout, it's about making sure that we have smaller class sizes, it's about making sure that we have peer-to-peer tutoring, so that making sure that our staff are willing and ready, which they are, to stay after school and have the extra one-on-one time with their students. That's what's important.
If our district employees and our students don't feel safe, either physically or emotionally, in their schools, they won't feel like they can achieve. So there's so many things that we could do better in order to make them feel that they are supported and that they are safe, whether that's affirming their identities in terms of making sure that, you know, they are, that they're not being attacked for who they are, that they are not, and that they are being served as maybe a student with disabilities, or they're being served in terms of making sure that they're not, that we're interrupting racism that is happening to them, and that we're providing professional development and better and more staff to be able to support our students so that they can achieve. That is, and making sure that their facilities are well maintained and safe for them. That is how we need to move forward and make it better.
Thank you. So last question, the 30-second one. We have $65 billion set aside for rural and urban broadband that was just released recently by the Congress. Do we still have a digital divide here in Culver City? And what, if so, what do we need to address it to make sure that students have access to broadband?
I honestly don't know. That is something that I would have to do research on. And if we do, then obviously we should be submitting for funds to be able to ensure that there is not a digital divide.
Do you mean within the school, or do you mean outside of school? A lot of kids don't live in Culver City. So where do you mean? I'm not really confused on the question.
Well, it's fair enough, but I think that the question overall is, to our students, what can we do to make sure all of our students have access to broadband, whether they live in the city or not? There are still students going to McDonald's in order to do their homework because they don't have internet in their affordable internet in their communities.
Well, this kind of speaks to something I had been thinking about, and it kind of goes back to the ecological impact, but I am really thinking about pushing us back a little bit towards the analog way of doing things. I think using computers all the time has really been a bit of it's been a difficult situation for some of our kids, and I think our kids are constantly looking at computers. As far as the digital divide, I think if we're going to maintain that kids have to use laptops, I think it does behoove us that we're going to have to make sure that they're able to access them at all times. So, as far as I know.
This was one of those things that they said could never be done until the pandemic hit, and then every kid was one-to-one except in the elementary schools. So we need to continue with that because we've seen that there are students who didn't have access to a computer, and we didn't know that, and well, many of us knew that because they were spending all nights at the library until the libraries closed. So we need to increase the work that we're doing. We need Wi-Fi on campus. We need after-school programs so students can stay on campus inside the walls of the school with campus security and safety and counselors available so that they can stay after school and work until their homework is done and their parents can pick them up, and that means that we have to expand the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, same thing. I think right now the devices are decent. They're not the best, but they work. You know, my son's able to do his homework and things like that. The district provides that. The Wi-Fi and the internet connectivity is the one that I worry about because there's students who, all right, they've got this computer, but if it can't connect to the internet, what are they going to do? When I was teaching during the first part of the whole pandemic, I would have students who were trying to do Zoom from their phones, and they were trying to like access the homework at the same time on their phones. You know, a lot of kids kind of fake it by using their phones and things like that, but folks really need that internet connectivity.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also going to speak to the piece about internet connectivity. In my job with the Housing Authority, part of the workforce piece is also the digital ambassadors program, which we pay you to be digital ambassadors to help bridge the digital divide. So yes, I think it's still an issue. We cannot control what opportunity people have when they leave our campuses. So we need to make sure that they're fully equipped to do this work and that we give them the resources that they need to succeed.
The Wi-Fi on campus campus is not great. It's not accessible everywhere, and it's spotty at best. Sometimes we would hear students come home to say like, oh, the whole entire network was down and our teachers weren't able to teach that day. We need to improve this, and we need to make sure that our students are going home not just with their Chromebooks, but also with hotspots. And this is something that we can take out, that normally we can get from and borrow from our county library, so we should be able to find a way to provide that to our students as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, during COVID, we really saw the digital divide played out in our classrooms. We saw, families like mine where each child had his or her own room and own laptop and was able to get on and do their Zooms. So other kids, if you're just sharing a room, it's going to be really tough. So what we need to do is not just look at Wi-Fi on campus, which is super important. I'm totally glad that everyone's supporting that. But we also need to talk about how we use the technology, keeping in mind that there are things like doing Zooms that everybody will not be able to do based on how they live.
Right, thank you. So what we're going to do for closing statements is start at the far end and move back. So Tristan, you can be the first for the last minute. Also, I would like to thank all of you for staying through the entire event. This was wonderful. I hope you all got your questions answered, and we should thank all 7 of the folks here for coming in for what I don't know if there have been other in-person ones compared to this, but I hope there were some good questions, and I urge all of you to vote because there are 3 spots open for the Culver City School Board. For bringing that in as well. So thank you again, and to all the organizers, and we'll go ahead and start with you, Tristan.
Thank you all so much. It's been a privilege to serve and advocate for my community over the years. I think in that time, during my advocacy, I fought successfully for the resources and opportunities that our communities have been denied for too long. My work is driven by impact in my personal and professional career. I work every day to provide resources and opportunity to historically underrepresented communities, staying in contact with some of the youth that I oversee, and hearing that they're on track to become first-gen graduates. That's why I do the work that I do. I'm also the son of immigrants. You can draw direct pathways from my grandparents who came to Minnesota after the Vietnam War, to my mom who didn't finish her college education because she was busy trying to provide a better future for me, to me being the person in my family on trying to graduate from college with undergraduate and master's from the University of Southern California. Education has opened doors for my family and has changed the trajectory of our lives. And it's that type of opportunity that I want to provide to every student that I have the privilege of serving in Culver City Unified School District. I fight every day, not just for, but with our community, to make sure that the students in our great district have access to a well-rounded public education that they so richly deserve.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I work with school districts and schools up and down the state. Culver City isn't perfect, but it is a good, solid school district, despite what you may have heard. We have great kids, we have great families, we have great employees. It's a solid school district. There are structural issues we need to deal with, absolutely. The good news is we have an opportunity over the next couple of years. There's actually a lot of funding coming into education right now. Culver City has $3 million in COVID funds from the federal government that are still unspent. There's another $2 million of state code defense funds that are unspent. There's a big increase in state funding overall, but to handle that and to make sure the programs are implemented well, you need somebody with experience, you need somebody with expertise. I've been endorsed by the employees unions, the Association of Classified Employees, and the Culver City Federation of Teachers, Culver City Dem Club, Culver City, the LA County Dems, and today the Federation of Labor. They all see that you need an educator on the school board.
Thank you.
So I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I want to continue on the school board because there are things that I've been fighting for that I have not really had the support in my colleagues, and I want to prioritize the mental health and emotional health of not just our students but also our staff. I want to make sure that we have safe campuses through training, extra training for our security teams, more counselors and therapists, an improved MOU with our local PD because they're the only local agency that we can call on in a disaster, and I want them to be there for us. We also need to make sure that we are paying all of our staff and teachers more. We're giving them professional development and opportunities for growth, and we need to modernize our campuses across the district so that our students are learning in a 21st century learning environment that is conducive to creativity and where every student can thrive. You can learn more about me at my website, summermcbride.com. I'm endorsed by both the Teachers Union in Culver City and the classified union, as well as AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Laborers, and the LA County Democratic Party. So thank you.
We've talked a lot about equity tonight, and it's not a big thing. I love my job, and I go around talking about it all the time, but I will say this. I go to work every single day, and I advocate for and I create true equity for Black and Latino kids, predominantly foster kids. These foster kids are predominantly Black and Latino, predominantly English language learners. They have IEPs, and they've experienced abuse like you wouldn't believe. I go to work every day, and I create true equity for those kids. You heard a lot about what we should do and what we need to do for people who say they're going to do it and people who say they have been doing it. But the truth of the matter is, there are a lot of opportunities for people who have had the position of power to do something about it. They haven't done it. There have been a lot of opportunities for people who are running for the school board right now who have had opportunities to stand up and say the right thing, and they haven't done it. So you might hear a lot about it, they might talk a lot about it, but honestly, it hasn't come to fruition. So just keep that in mind when you go to the ballot. And I want to thank Temple Akiba and everybody for coming tonight. Thank you very much.
First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I'd like to thank Temple Akiba for giving me the opportunity to get up and speak in a public forum and let everybody know where I stand on different issues. I am very passionate about ensuring that our kids are getting an excellent education, and I'm also very passionate about ensuring that it is in a safe and clean environment, which we currently do not have, and that our teachers and our staff are also able to go to work in a safe and clean environment. I think that the only way that we're going to change the trajectory of our schools is to flip the school board. So I would very much appreciate you to invest in our community and vote for me. Thank you.
Well, of course, I want to thank Temple Akiba as well. It's been great to be here. I think it's been a wonderful evening. You know, I'm fundamentally an optimist. I prefer to talk about what we can do rather than what's wrong. I prefer to focus on what the possibilities are. And, you know, Culver City has changed so much over the last 20, 25 years. Our kids graduate from high school, and people know where they come from because they've heard of NPR West, they've heard of TikTok and Amazon Studios. Culver City's on the map. There's a lot of private resources here. This community has become a wealthy community in many ways. And we can make public-private partnerships that help invest in our schools. We can work with the Culver City Education Fund to bring money to our schools. I think it's the job of the school board to marshal the resources of the community for the benefit of the school. But to do that, we need serious, experienced people on the school board who know the community and know how to connect with everyone in the community. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you get your support in November.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening. Thank you to Andrew for moderating today. I'm so pleased to see the community involvement, and we're not always going to agree on things, and that's okay, as long as we can listen and build relationships and make sure that we're not like so stuck in our own thoughts that we can't continue hearing each other. You know, this is really what's important, is it's building this community, seeing you show up, seeing you care about your community and making it better. And I want to be a part of that. And the best way to do that is to continue to see that we all want the success of our schools, and I hope that I can get your support this year.
Thank you. Don't make sure put the microphones too close to each other, they might blow up or something. First of all, again, thank you everyone for coming here and for asking great questions. Sorry we couldn't get to every single one of those. There were some wonderful questions. We tried to combine as many of them as possible. We encourage you to come out and vote in November, and we look forward to hopefully seeing many of you in Rosh Hashanah within the week. L'Shana Tova. I'm not here either, but I want to thank the other staff here at Temple Akiba who set this place up. Again, the men's group, the Sisterhood, Temple Akiba Board of Trustees,